This kit is of the Festiniog 16mm scale Porthole carriage. It's loosely based on various drawings and pictures I found on the internet. Size 2 people sat inside, who are of course sat at 2 meters distance apart. So I just move around so you can see some more detail. And then if we go inside, I'll just remove the men. Inside we have seating detail, planking on the ends, and floorboard detail. And we have the portholes at both ends. The roof is obviously removable, as I've done, and has planking detail engraved into it on the inside. And then the underside has my normal running gear, which I fit to all my wagons. You can have steel or plastic wheels. In either case, they both run in bull races, which makes them very smooth running. Buffers are by Binny buffers, and they're located in a slot, and the slot allows you to move the buffer up and down by 3mm, and there's a slot, just an accessible slot underneath to get to the nut to lock it in place. When it's built, it has a clearance between the rail head and the underside of the body of 10mm. This may be a bit tight for your particular application, but the system, the way it's built, is the chassis is a separate chassis. As you can see, it's removable. When this sits in, it sits down onto the axle boxes, and this surface here sits on that surface there, and that's the 10mm one. By suitable packing, you can of course decide where you want the height of the actual carriage to be. So if 10 is too low, you can make it 12, 14. It's up to you. You add the packing that's required. But bear in mind that any packing you do add will raise the body. The roof you can hold on by weights in the roof. I don't know, we're wandering off. I should stop in a moment. They do run very freely. By adding weights in the roof, or you can use some blue tack, or if it's a permanent fixture, obviously you can glue it down. Right, the overall weight with metal wheels is 280 grams. The length between the buffers is 200mm. Overall length of the body is 170mm. Overall width is 110mm. Height, when it's running at its 10mm clearance, from rail top to the apex is 110mm. The buffer height is adjustable when it's running at a 10mm height between 25 and 28mm. That's the kit you're going to make, and I hope that you enjoy it, and it does make a rather nice free-running coach. Thank you. Right, the next part we're going to construct is the chassis cum running gear. So we'll start off by fitting the bearings to one of the underframes. So you need to locate underframe number 4, and you can see that's got a bar on the bottom. You turn that over so you can't see the number, and then you place the bull race in with the flange facing up. And you do that on the other number 4 as well. Again, turn it over so you can't see the number. Bull race in. Bull race in. And then find part number 5. Okay, turn that over so you can't see the number, and just clip that in behind, and then lay that down. The reason we do that is, as you can see, the ball race does protrude slightly beyond, and we need to use part 5 as a packer before we glue it. So again, number 4 with the ball races in, take number 5, turn him over, and then plug him down. And now we have to run some super glue around the edges just to lock the ball races in. You don't need much, because it will do a capillary action. Bit top and bottom, and tease it round. And if you do that on all the other 4. Right, now is a good time to lubricate the bearings. So I've now stuck my 4 on. So take the back piece number 5 off, turn them over, and you can see the little balls. And just put a small drop of 3-in-1 I use. Doesn't matter what sort of oil, just to give the balls a little bit of a coating of oil. Because when it's actually assembled, it's not the easiest place to get to. Right, so that's now lubricated the bearings. We can now start to put the chassis together. Right, the next part we're going to do is to fit the axle boxes. So you need to find 4 of those. It should be in focus, there we go. And they get fitted to part number 6. Bring it into focus. And they go, fairly obvious I think, they actually glue into that location there. Now it's very important that the actual bottom faces there line up with each other. So I'll show you the way that I tend to do this, and I'll just zoom in. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Okay. Right, for this I use a white PVA glue. I won't glue it for the moment, I'll just run through what I do is get your bit of glue, just a blob of small white PVA, drop it into there, and then drop your part down on, and then using, in my case it's a part of the chassis, but use the same thing if you like. It's important that it touches the end. So if we line it up and push it in hard, and then line up the axle box, also pushing in against the upright piece, and then push down. Now you know that it's level with the bottom. And then you do that on the other 3 locations. Well, that's my 4 glued on. And then while the PVA glue is still wet, if you get any oozing out, now's the time to go around with a knife blade and just remove any excess. If you wait until it's dry, you'll find this quite a difficult task to do. The other thing to make sure that when you're doing it is that the half rings are facing up, as you can see on the 4 I've done here. Right, let's move on to the next part. Right, now let's start to assemble it. So start off with the base, and if you find parts number 5, you'll find they've got a lug. Let's move it into the middle so you can see. They've got a lug sticking out, so that goes into there. It's very straightforward with the numbers facing out, so that's number 5. If you do the same with the other number 5, again number facing out, and then the numbers count down as they go in. So if that's 5, the next one we have to fit is 4, and again with the numbers facing out. You'll find that just slots in where the bearings go. Same for that number 4. And then find number 3. Just rest them in there, hold them with your finger and thumb. And number 3, again writing to the outside. And then number 2, writing to the outside. The other number 2, writing to the outside. number 1 and the other number 1. And just roughly align them with each other. And we fit the wheels. And sort of prise it apart to do the job. Drop them down into the bearing holes. You have to manoeuvre it around a little bit to make sure they go in. And do the same on the other side, or other end. Spinning round. Again, force it apart. Tight fit. That's got those in position. Now we put the spreaders in, and they go into, just hold it up so you can see, there's a slot on part number 1, there's a slot on the other side. You'll see there's a little lug, and they just go in to the lugs, into the holes. And it may be, you've got to lift it out of the hole to slide it across. Quite a finicky job to do, and it'll all drop back in again. And we go around and we do the other end. Again, line up one side with the slot, and then lift the other side up slightly to move them out. So the spreader drops into its slots. Line everything back up. Check the wheels rotate. Now we can put the end pieces on. You can see 2 holes line up with the 2 pins, and the other pins line up with the base. Quite straightforward. Spinning round, do the same the other end. That locks that in quite nicely. And we've got the final pieces, which is number 6, goes onto the outside there, and number 6 goes onto the outside there. It's beneficial at this point to put an elastic band around it all. And make sure everything is pushed down firmly onto the base plate. And then just while holding it firmly, double check the wheels rotate. We now have to glue all this in position. So this is best done with super glue, and I'll go through what we have to do. Right, so what we're going to do is we're going to run some, while holding a bit of pressure, hold it together, we're going to run some super glue along that area there, which will hold those together. So I'm just going to put a super glue, rub it around a little bit so that it soaks down into the joints. Do the same on the other side. Right to the edge. And take a small piece of tissue and just dab off the excess. And then while you're holding that there, just run some super glue down into the corner. And the same on the other corner. And along the bottom, making sure the end is pushed in firmly. And then slowly move back. Again, keeping pressure downwards. Make sure everything is pushed down firmly. Move on to the spreader. Again, a little bit on the bottom, a little bit on the top. Same on the other side. A little bit in the middle. By which time we can release, turn them round, and we do exactly the same at the other end. So again, a little bit of pressure, make sure the end piece is pushed in. Super glue, make sure it soaks in. The tissue. Again, same as the other end, when we're holding it, just go into the corners. Along the bottom, making sure this piece is firmly pushed in. Back to the spreader, again push down. Top, bottom, middle, and come back to the middle section, a little bit there, a little bit there, and then we put that to one side for about 10 minutes to dry. Right, once you've allowed that to dry, just remove the elastic band. The next thing we have to do is to glue 6 laminates together. And again, we use super glue. And just rub it over the top, the wick down inside. And then we have to pull those edges together. Now you can either pull it with your fingers and hold it, or use one of these little clamps, which I use. It just clamps that, and turn around. We do exactly the same on the other side. Rub it backwards and forwards. And again, either hold with your fingers or use a second clamp. And again, we leave that for about 30 seconds. It's long enough for the super glue to go off. And when the glue's gone off, give about 30 seconds, remove the clamp, and with a bit of tissue, soak up the excess glue. Do the same on the other side. That's your chassis constructed. So at this point, be handy just to make sure that it runs true. So you need to take a bit of track, drop the chassis on, and check it runs okay, and there's no slop, no sideways movement. There shouldn't be if you built it on a flat board. You'll find because it's got ball races, it does run very, very smoothly, very, very freely. So that's the chassis part done. Right, we're now going to construct the seating area, which then the actual body is built around that. So we have a base, which has got engraving on one side and has got indentations cut into the other side. should look like that. Nodules on the bottom, small nodules on top. There's two of those. And there's two with nodules sticking out bottom, plain on top. That's those two. One capping strip, a single piece, and two end pieces. Now the first thing you've got to do is to clean out the actual holes that have been cut. Well, not holes, indentations. Now the best way to do this is with a small screwdriver. I'll just bring it up so you can see it in detail. As soon as we come into focus. There we go. Now, in that area there, just want to rummage around with the screwdriver just to get rid of the carbon. And once you've done that, using either a fiberglass bristly brush, or in my case an old toothbrush, or use the wife's toothbrush, don't tell her, and just to clean out the actual hole itself, or not the hole, the indentation. And you do that on all the other ones. So go ahead and do that. And don't forget to do it on the two smaller pieces. Get in there. And just have a rummage around, and it'll break all the carbon up. Right, I've done that. Now we do a quick check to make sure that we don't have any problems putting this together. So if you take a piece that's got very small sticky out bits, and you'll see that there's three that we've cleaned up there. That goes in, just goes into those little holes all the way along. And you should be able to hold it and not see any light through it, to make sure you're down firmly and there's nothing blocking where the legs go in. So I'll just bring that up close so you can see what I've done. There we go. And it goes with the markings to the outside as I've shown there. So that's a trial fit. Do the same on the other side. Again, make sure it goes in there and is a good fit. And then the end pieces, again, they should drop into the indentations. They do. And last of all is to make sure the back ones line up with the little ones there. You'll see how it all goes together in a moment. So that goes in there, that's okay. So we check that on all of them. I will do. Right, the next job then is to flat surface, again making sure the printing is on the outside, pushing down into there, then add the next one, which is the end one, and pull it in tight, and it should almost click in, and then put the other end one in. And then again, making sure you've got the printed side facing out. And you find it does actually stay together quite well. So we now have to glue that in position. Make sure it's pushed down firmly into the slots underneath, and is squeezed tight against this one. Make sure you've got no gaps where you've got no rubbish caught in the bottom of those little holes. And then we use super glue, and we go in on the corners at the top, down the edge, and along the bottom, and a little bit where the actual tangs go in. And just hold that for a while. spinning round. Again, we do exactly the same. This end, push down, squeeze, make sure it's all firmly down. Again, we go in on the ends or corners. Again, where the tongue drops in. Put that wick in. Again, 25-30 seconds is more than adequate. And then move to the middle section and just push down, and again where the lugs touch along the bottom, just add a little bit of super glue. Again, keep some downward pressure on there. That's your seating area. Again, make sure that there's no gaps running along there or gaps running along there. It's seated down quite nicely. Right, so that's now all done. So the next job we're going to do is to actually fit the base. As you can see, it's fairly obvious. It's got planking on it, and it goes that way up, and you'll find that it drops quite nicely into all the cutouts. Make sure you put it on the right way up so that you can see the planking detail all the way around. And when you glue this one, it's important that the sides, let me take this off so I can show you. You don't want the sides pushed in like that. You want them slightly pulled out so it runs down the sides. If it's pushed in, then the chassis won't actually fit in. So what we do is position that on there. What I tend to do is start at one end, begin with the super glue, make sure it's pushed down, and then use a little bit of super glue, just go in where that notch is on the ends. Just let the super glue soak down in. And just use a bit of tissue and wipe off the excess. Then we go to the other side. Again, we do exactly the same, push down and push that way so the notch is fully engaged. Just super glue, let it soak down in. And a quick wipe to remove the excess. And we turn around, we do the other end, again pushing down and that way to make sure the notch is fully engaged. Try not to get any super glue on the inside because that may stop the chassis loading in. And last but not least, the other one on this side. Wipe off the excess. So that's the ends done. Now we're going to move to the halfway. Now what we don't want it to do is to be glued, bring it up so you can actually see. Right, if I do that, we don't want it glued like that. It's got to be pulled to the outside. So again, down here we pull it to the outside as I am there. Just add a bit of glue in there. Just soak down in and wipe off the excess. Just hold it there for about 10 seconds, then repeat for the other side. And wipe off the excess. Then move to the next one, next one, next one, and next one. So I'll go ahead and do those, and when you come back we'll move on to the next part. Right, so I've now glued all my round. Next job is to take some sandpaper. I mean, I'm using 80 grit, but 120 grit, something like that, and just gently rub the inside. Just give a slight radius, hardly anything, and just to remove any high spots. Right, so now we do a trial fit. So you'll need the chassis you made previously, which I have here. And again, just with some fine sandpaper, just gently rub the outside, just to remove any high spots. Same at the end. Just where the super glue may have got on the side, PVA. Right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to fit, or do a trial fit, of the chassis into the body. But before we do this, you must make sure that any glue you've used on the inside is dry and is not sticky. Otherwise, once you put this in, it's stuck in there forever. We don't want to do that at the moment. So cleaned up all the way around, make sure no glue on the inside. We take our chassis and we drop it in gently, and it should fall in quite nicely until, I'll take it out so you can see what we're doing. It will go in until the actual axle boxes that we glued on earlier on both sides should come down and rest on the inside, which they do there and they do there. So that's effectively your running chassis now. So that fits in there okay, so we can now move on to the next stage. So take this one out, gently pull it up by the axles, slowly ease it out. Put the chassis to one side, and we will now move on to the next section. Right, next section is doing the back rests. So again, you need the part we just built, you need the two back rests and the end stop or the end cover. Quite simple how these go in. 6 holes, so he goes in the first set there, again facing out. This one the other side, again facing out, and they join together at the top to make a V. So I'll just turn that round so you can see. It's fairly obvious anyway, there we go. And that makes up your V. Try and get it as upright as you can. So obviously you can put it over there or over there. Don't make it like a drunk man. Get it as upright as possible. So the first thing to do is, once you've got it upright, we need to just sort of tack it, glue it in position. So we start with one end, which I start with this end. So just a little bit of super glue. Make sure you're running, let's say, nicely upright, and it's pulled together. That looks pretty good to me. And just add a bit of super glue into the end there. And then wipe off excess. And just hold that there. And a quick check that we're about right, which we are. So now we can go to the midpoint. Spread it up and down a bit. Wipe off the excess. Now we need to now glue the backrest down to the actual seats, and this is best done from the inside. So keeping your finger on the top, so it's pushed down properly on both sides on the lugs. Take your super glue, and this time just put it on the inside of the lug. That way it doesn't run through, so you don't see any glue from the other side. Just keep a bit of pressure there. We move up to the next one, which is the next end up, and again you can just get it the lugs in the end. And a bit of super glue into each one. You can see what I'm doing. Again, a bit of downward pressure and squeeze. Move down to the other end, again do the same. Push down, squeeze, then you go back to the other end, wipe off any excess glue, just to clean it up a little bit. Any excess in the middle. You don't want any lumps sticking up here. Again, because it will stop the chassis fitting in. Right, now we can fit the capping strip, which literally just glues straight on top, like that there. Also, you can use a white PVA or you can use super glue, but it's important that it's flush on the end there. So you can use your finger, and it should be flush the other end as well. So in my case I'm going to use some PVA to glue this one on. Run some PVA down there. It's not a structural part, so you don't need too much. And then what I do is, if you run your fingers down the edge like that, that tends to take any excess off the edges. And then position it on, level with the end, run your fingers along, and then if there's any excess leaking through, just clean it off. So that's the seating done. So let's move on to the next part. Right, we're now going to construct the sides and the structure that supports the roof. So you'll need the part you just built, two sides, obviously in 2mm. The roof structure, or so that supports the roof, quite fragile, so go a bit careful with that. And you'll need two jigs. They're labelled jig. They're also labelled do not glue. It's important neither of these are glued in. They're purely to assemble the unit to itself. Right, so we start off by adding the side, or you'll also need lots of elastic bands. So if you look at the sides, the engraving goes on the inside. That becomes the outside surface with an overlay put over it at the very end. So you start off with part you made, and you'll see that there's lugs along the bottom and they drop in quite easily. You do the same with the other side, again making sure that the engraving is facing in. They drop in. Then a jig goes up the end, and you can see that it will slot in to the slots. They line up on both sides. You do need 4 hands to do this, but it is possible. So holding thumb and finger on that one on that end there, And then you put the jig your other end. And then we can slot the roof in, or the support for the roof. It's got the words up written on it. So they go in so you can actually see the word up. And they again slot in similar to the bottom into little grooves or slots on that side. Just tease them out and they'll drop in quite nicely. So then we put the elastic bands on. So start at one end, so over that one, down and round there. And then do another one down on the bottom. And try and put it so that it goes over the actual tang of the jig itself that sticks out. And do that again, do that on the top. Check it for the other end. So that makes quite a solid structure, which we can now glue into position. I should point out that this arrangement on here will be broken out when it's finished. That's just there to give it some support while we're gluing it. You'll also note that the side pieces don't protrude right up into the jig on the end. That's normal. They only protrude 1mm and the actual jig is 2mm, but that'll be sorted out when we put the right piece on the end there. So the next job then, as I say, is to glue it. Right, so now we'll glue it up. We use super glue, and I'll show you where we put it and then I'll go ahead and do it. It's important again, don't glue the end piece on, please. Right, so we start off with the bottom half where the lugs come through, and just push down gently onto the lugs, and then we're just going to put some super glue where each one of those is, and then with the tissue just wipe it off. Wipe off downwards. Don't want to get any glue on this surface because that's seen after we put the overlay on. So let's do that now. So let's pour out some super glue. Yep, you can see what I'm doing hopefully. Right. For the super glue. Keep some downward pressure. Work it into the joint. And then with a tissue, wipe it off. And just hold a bit of pressure there for 5-10 seconds. And turn it over and repeat that for the other side. And then we do exactly the same on the top, but try not to push down too hard because it is quite fragile. In fact, once you put the glue in there, it may be beneficial just to give it a squeeze rather than a push down. So if you do both sides on the top, and then we'll move on to the next section. Right, so I've done my gluing on the 8 lugs each side, top and bottom. It's now useful where the lugs are, is to just put a little bit of super glue on the actual join there, and there, and there, and there. Do that on the other side and on the bottom. Which I'll just show you on the top so you can quickly see what I'm doing. So find where the lug is, just add a little bit there, where the next lug is, where the next lug is, where the next lug is. And then with a piece of tissue, wipe off the excess. Just run it down the join. Try not to stop if you get tissue stuck to it. And then if you do that on the other side and on the 2 bottom parts. Right, put that one side to dry. And we can now prepare the end pieces. You need the 2 ends, and you'll find there's 2 like half moon pieces, and you'll find that they line up with the engravings that are there. This is purely as a support piece that enables the roof to line up with it. Now, when this is fitted, this takes on a curve. So when we glue this on now, we only want to put just a little bit of glue in the middle, use a PVA glue, and then line him up. The important part to line up is with the top. Make sure it's flush and lines up all along the top, and then just squeeze in the middle. That's the only part we're interested in gluing at the moment. So we'll do that with some PVA or wood glue. So we don't need an awful lot, just a little bit in the middle there. And then lay the piece on, roughly the right position. And then we can maneuver it around until we line up with the top surface. And then when you're happy, just squeeze it and hold it. Again, rub your finger over the top. Get rid of any excess glue that oozes out. Then we can put that one to one side to dry. And we do the next one. Just to remove any excess glue which is oozing out along the bottom. So while it's still wet, just run a knife blade along there to remove excess glue. And do the same with the other one. Now we can leave those thoroughly dry. Right, so we've allowed that to dry. So we're now going to fit this to the end. So we start off by removing the elastic bands we had on there, holding it together on the sides and one of the jigs in on the end. Then remove one jig, and then we offer this part up. Now we make sure the engraving goes on the inside, and you'll see there's some lug holes along the bottom. They will line up with the bottom ones there. So just drop him on to start with. And then with one elastic band, put it at one end, just about right, and pull him. It will all drop into position. It will line up with the lugs on the side. And try and get the elastic band where the actual, how do you explain this? Where the lugs are on the actual end piece. Now it's quite springy, so carry on adding elastic bands. May have to put 2 on each lug. And then slowly work your way down onto the next one. Onto the next one. Keep going until you get to the bottom. The elastic bands I'm using aren't particularly powerful. They're about a 2-inch diameter. They don't have to be this colour. Right, when you've got them all on there, make sure that the top there sits up nice and neatly and flush underneath the actual piece of reinforcement we put in there. Check down the sides, it's all pulled in tight and is straight. Do that on both sides. There may be a very slight overhang in that direction, maybe 0.2, 0.3 of a millimetre. That's okay because we can sand that off afterwards. That's due to the tolerance of the laser cutting and the build. But that's the next part we should do now, is to actually glue that in position. Best way to glue it to start with is again making sure that that is firmly pushed in and is up underneath it. And then we run some super glue along there along there, and along there. And we turn it over, and we do exactly the same underneath. We run the super glue all the way along that edge there, and then using a tissue, just wipe off the excess. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then you can do the same. So you get your super glue, have a piece of tissue ready. We'll do the top one first. Double check you've got the engraving on the inside, because there's no going back on this. And then add some super glue. And if you've got some tissue, just wipe off any excess you've got in there. Turn it over and do the same on the bottom. Now make sure it's pushed in firmly and down. The elastic band should hold it in position. And leave that for about 5 minutes to dry. Right, next task now is to actually glue where the lugs are. So I found the best way is do this carefully, because we want to keep this surface quite nice and clean. So get a little bit of super glue, and just where the lug is, just sort of wipe it in gently. Just a smear, and let it go down by a capillary action that soak down in. And then go along with the tissue and wipe it off afterwards, but wipe it away. So I'll just do that on this end. So hardly any glue. And using a tissue. And then you do that on the outside, and then we come back to this end in a moment. Right, I've done that side now. So now the thing to do is to again leave it for 4 to 5 minutes to make sure the glue has gone off completely. And then we have to go up and then we do the other end. So this is exactly a copy of what we did before. Take the elastic bands off. I won't go into all the details on this end. Take the jig out. Make sure you've got your end with the actual engraving facing in. Line up the lugs on the bottom. This is a bit easier because obviously you haven't got a loose end this end. And then do exactly the same. Elastic bands. I won't go through it all again. Line them all up. Glue around the top, making sure it's pulled up. Glue around the bottom. And then glue down each of the lugs. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Right, while we're waiting for the glue to dry on the end pieces, we'll move on to doing a bit more work on the other overlay. Each overlay are identical each end, 3 holes in each, and we've got some rings to add. There's a right way and a wrong way. There's a clean side, then there's a brown dirty side. We want to put the clean side to the clean side, and they just glue down and line up with the engraving that's there. Not too much glue is needed. For this I use white PVA again, so we can move it around to make sure it's in the right place. So I've just got a very small amount, and just touch it in 4 places. How I do it, maybe even do it in 3 or 2. Hardly any. And drop the ring on. And position him till he's in the right position. And then when you're happy he's in the right position, just squeeze. Where are we? There we are. Just squeeze for about 5-10 seconds. Check that he's in the right position, and move on to the next one. This is all fairly basic stuff. We'll come back and remove the excess glue in a moment. Next one on. Manoeuvre it until it's about right. And squeeze. And move on to the third one. And we started with the middle one. Just go around the edge. Just scrape off anything that's any glue that's oozed out. Right, having done that, we can then put that one to one side, and while we're waiting for that one to dry, we'll do the other one. Right, I've fitted my rings on there. What I should have said was there's obviously a clean side and a dirty side. You need to put the rings on the clean side, which is where the engraving is, and you'll also see there's some engraving on there. So while we've been doing that, the glue's gone off on this one, so we can now remove our elastic bands. Got a sturdy box now. And we need to just clean this up a little bit. If there's any slight protrusions, then just with some sandpaper, I'm using 80 grit, but obviously 120 or 240, just gently on the edge, just to take the surface off, or the edge that's sticking out. Again, just run down gently where the legs are. There shouldn't be anything protruding. Do that on both sides. If you're going to be painting separately as you're building it, then now is the time to paint this particular part before we put the overlays on. And you'd obviously have painted the overlays before we stick those on. But it's best just with a light sanding over. You can get rid of the burn marks from where the laser's been, and then spray it or paint it depending on your preference. So I'll just go ahead and do the other side. Right, I've done the sides. I want to do the same on the ends as well, because again we want a nice smooth surface to put the overlays on. So again, just a gentle rub over, just to remove any high spots or bits of glue that have got through. Or again, if you're going to paint it at this point, you still do the same process. Do the same the other end. Obviously, if you cock up any parts or break anything while you're making it, then just drop me an email with your address, the part you're missing or broken, picture would be useful, and I'll get them in the post you straight away. I mean, accidents do happen, so don't worry about it too much, just let me know. But, right, let's now just take an overlay so you can see how it goes on. They drop over like that, and you'll see that it actually covers up where the various pins from the other parts come through. Now I found the best way to glue this on is with white PVA. Right, so now we're going to glue this on, and the principle is we put PVA glue over the back, spread it around with my fingers, and then we offer it up. I gently push down. What we're looking for is flush along the bottom, and then if you put your fingers at each end and just squeeze gently, you'll find that it self-centers itself. And then work your way up to the top and pull those down as well. You'll find the holes will line up, the viewing holes, and then it's a case of just keeping your hand on top of it, holding it in position for a couple of minutes just to make sure the glue then has gone off. So I'll go ahead and do that, and you can see what I'm doing. So first of all, I'll put me, I'm just going to put blobs of glue, you can see what I'm doing. I'll go ahead and do that. I'll spread it, rods coming down. And then just sort of spread it around with your finger. It's not a stressed part. Work fairly quickly. And put it in the right way. Offer him up. Make sure, again, it's level with the bottom and level at each end. There should be no overhang, it should fit snugly on the ends. And then move up to the top. You've got some lateral movement because the wood is flexible, you can move it sideways. But just push down. A quick check. Everything's lined up. And then apply some pressure over the whole thing. And we hold that for a couple of minutes. Check the sides, top, and then using a knife blade, any excess that's oozed out, just get rid of it. There are other ways of fixing this on. You can use a paper craft mount spray, just spray the back of this, not the actual wagon itself but the overlay. That seems to work quite well. I haven't actually tried that myself. Something for me to try in the future. And now we can actually check down the side and the other side. Now we can go and do the other end. So when you come back, I'd have done the other end. Right, so I fitted both my ends now. And there may be a slight protrusion, if you rub your finger along, there may be a high spot there on the ends. Now we've got to remove that, because the next part we're going to fit is the side overlays. And obviously we need a flat surface there. So just gently take the top off. Until it's flush. Do that on all the ends. You obviously only do this once you've thoroughly dried with the overlays. So I'll go ahead and do that, and when you come back we'll move on to putting the side overlays on. Right, so I've now sanded off my ends. Now it's time to fit the side overlay. Yes, you can put it on upside down. As you can see, just make sure you put it on the right way. You'll find that everything lines up as it should do. You'll find the ends will line up with the bottom. Then you'll have a small gap around the window area. The inside of the door will line up. The top will line up, and so will the top sides. Now the way I do this is to put some PVA, again like we do in the end overlays, all over it, and then we drop it down on. We line up the bottom and the two ends, and then keeping some pressure on there, we then go to the top, because it's movable. You can actually flex it a little bit if you need to. just to line up the sides and the top, and then just check inside the door. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll just tip out my white PVA glue. Same principle as before, just put a few blobs on. And then smear it on with your finger to get rid of the high points. Off my fingers. So lay them on. And then you go to the bottom. Make sure it's in line, finger each end. Hold it there for a little while, make sure the glue goes off. Double check it. Then we move up the sides, on the top. Again, check the sides. You can sort of also flex it a little bit if you need to. And squeeze on top. Try not to put too much pressure because it's obviously not supported. Bottom, along the ends, and along the top. So we can now push the rest down in. Still manoeuvre it around a little bit if you need to. And then any glue that's shown through, again use the knife blade to remove it. That overlay done, turn over, and we do exactly the same on the other side. Right, that's my both sides done. Now there's a slight error here, which should be corrected on your versions. As you can see, let's bring it up into focus so you can actually see. Don't know. There's you can just see it there. There's a little bit overhang there because the side should have kicked in at that point. That'll be corrected on your version, but for mine, as this is the first one, then I should just trim that back with a knife myself. But I'll correct it on the laser cut. Right, you let that thoroughly dry. And when you're happy that it is thoroughly dry, then again, same as before, just gently sand this surface here, just to remove the high spots and blend it in. Do that on the four corners. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Right, next job now is to remove the inner support structure, and the easiest way to do that is using a pair of snips. Right, so the first thing to do really is to go around and remove the inner bit first of all. So just go around and snip it. That allows you to remove that part, and then if you do the same, so you leave the little stalk sticking out from the body itself. Some of them may break off. And the next thing to do, use the snips, which is probably the best way of doing it anyway. That way, less damage or possible damage. And the ones in the corner, just wiggling backwards and forwards. And then to clean up the corners, use a knife blade. Try not to cut your finger off. do that for the corners. And then for the ones running along the side, best to use a bit of sandpaper, similar to what we were using before. Just gently rub the inside, then to get rid of the high spots. Do that on both sides. And on each end. Some loose bits in there, there we go. Right, so the next bit we now move on to is fitting the roof. Now the roof section, which follows, you'll be seeing as me fitting a roof, but not to this particular coach, but it will in fact be to another version with the more open side and doesn't have the roundels at the end. But the principle is exactly the same, how you actually fit the roof. You fit the parts in, template, roof on, glue it all together. So what follows is for this model and for the other one. Also following roof fitting, we'll show fitting the actual chassis to the underside and how that goes in. Again, that won't be on this particular coach, but the principle is exactly the same, as the underframe is identical on this coach as on the other one. And then the final section at the end is fitting the handles to the side, which again will be different on the one you're about to watch, but the handle is the same and goes in the same position. So that then completes the build. So I hope you enjoy it, and just obviously watch the next sections to complete the model. Thank you. So we now move on to doing the roof section. Right, now we're about to build the roof. So you'll need the frame or body that you've already built. Just put that to one side a moment. Two parts, quite fragile, but not going to put together like that. And you'll need two of those. You notice that these two have a straight part and a small engrave. I'll bring that up closer so you can see that. Hand underneath. There I can see the engraving mark, and it's flat underneath. And then you'll need four of these. Again, they're very fragile, and the reason they're fragile is they're cut. Let's try and get that into focus. There we go. They're cut and scored because once we've built this, we break them off at that point, and that's to help the breaking off. So you need to go a little bit careful with these. If you've looked at some of my other videos on building other wagons, the roof is built to the same principle. It's nice and easy, and you always get a nice curved roof that fits. So we start off by taking the ones with the flat edge and the engrave. Now they go each end, and you want the engraving mark facing out. So it's like that. So just drop him in, lean him against the side so he doesn't fall over. Then you take the other one, again, engrave mark, that faces out, and just drop him into there. Then take the other four, which I've got here. Try and put them the same way around, it'll help later on, but it's not necessary, so you can see the actual engraving marks. Doesn't matter which way around they go, just drop those in to there for the moment. Now this is a bit like a jigsaw, but more difficult. You start off by taking the long bit, and as you can see it drops down into that slot on the end one there. Then take the next one along and drop him down into the slot. So this bit is not easy, but it's possible. You take the next one, you drop him down, and the next one, and the next one, and the last one. And then you do exactly the same on the other side, but trying to keep them all together. So lay your hand on the bunch and then just slowly work your way along. Right, once you've got them all in, you need to make sure that they're all vertical in relation to each other. And that's just a case of manoeuvring them, not too critical. Right, so at that point now we now have to glue those in position. So I start at this end and using the super glue, just get some glue, just keep a little bit of pressure downwards at this end and just put a little bit of super glue on the inside and do the same at this end there. And then on the outside there, and then slowly work your way along. Now the inner ones, you can put it in 4 positions if you want to. So you can actually cover the inners and the outers. If you get any on the top surface, just brush it off with your finger. And this you do working all the way along until you get to this end. So I'll go ahead and finish that, and then we'll move on to the next bit when you've done that. Right, the next stage is to, now that we've done the frame inside and we have the roof, is to fit the two together. Now I've got to do this holding the camera, otherwise you won't actually see what I'm actually doing. So you find a flat surface and lay on the roof panel with engraving up. You can see there's an alignment mark there and there's an alignment mark there. They line up with the alignment marks. And it focuses there on the end. And there'll be one at the other end as well. So what we do is we turn the whole wagon upside down. We manoeuvre it until we line up the lines. That end, and then we do the same for the other end, and we keep manoeuvring it around backwards and forwards until the marks line up precisely. When you're happy that everything is lined up, you then take some super glue . To point this out, and you put a bead of super glue just in there where the line is, and you do that on the other side as well, and then you leave that for about 5 to 10 minutes for the glue to go off. And once the glue's gone off, You then have to do a rotate, i.e. you just turn it so you can see it. You then pull the coach sideways and you rotate it down, and then you go along while you're holding it and you put some super glue on each of those joints where it touches. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and do the super gluing now on the centre point, and then we'll come back and I'll show you how we do the next bit. I've now super glued, can't actually get in there, right, I've now super glued the ends. You see better that end where the two lines join up. It's also beneficial to go in with some super glue, let's see if I can point, and actually put just a dollop on each of the cross pieces in the centre where it touches the roof. If you could do that on each of the 4 individual inside cross members, that will help. Right, I've added my super glue to the, there we go, you can just see it in focus now, down the centre of each one. Not too much, just enough to hold it in position. Right, now I've glued mine all the way along, and as I slowly release, it's stuck quite firmly. Now what I did is, while it was laid down on the edge, I actually pushed some super glue right up each of those edges, up as far as it would go. Then we spin round, and then we do exactly the same on this side. Again, tilt him over and glue down each of the joints where it touches the roof. Right, so I've glued mine this side now again. So rotate back up, and we now have the roof glued both sides. So we can then lift off the body. And we now have to do some reinforcing on the roof. Right, what we now have to do is to run some super glue in along each of those and down, let's see if we can see it, that join there. So you run your glue along there and then place your thumb on each side and press and grip it so it's pushed down hard, and also the ends of your fingers there, so that it's well and truly glued to the former. And you do that on each of the ones working your way along. Don't break these off yet, because we haven't got a proper glue joint, hasn't gone off there. So if you try and break these off now, it's going to actually break the glue joint, and we can't do that at the moment. We need to leave that a good 15-20 minutes to make sure the glue is firmly gone off. So while we're waiting for that, that's when we go and glue that line along there. So if you do that on all 6 of them, and then we'll move on to breaking the tabs off. Right, so I've gone along and super glued where we discussed all the way along each of those joints. So the next job now is to break off the legs. And I found the best way to do these so that we don't do any damage is a pair of pin nose pliers. If you just go in and hold it gently, where I'm holding now, you can see that this is the side that's got the engraving on, so you need to push it away from the engraving, and it just easily breaks off. Then we move to the next one, as you can see in the light there, and again just hold it with the snips fairly tightly and just flex it and it will break off. And just work your way along. All that's now left is with some either a sharp knife or a piece of sandpaper is to just tidy up the parts we've just broken off that leaves a little mark behind. So I'll go ahead and do that. Right, I've cleaned all mine up. Now the next task is to make sure the roof actually fits onto the wagon. But you really need to do this when the super glue you are sure is completely dry, otherwise you do risk gluing the roof permanently on. So it's a simple fact, it should just slit on and be quite a good fit all the way around. If it's too loose a fit and keeps blowing off in the wind, then you can either add some weight up inside, or you can add some blue tack to those 2 points there, and that will actually hold the roof on in position. Right, next task is to fit the undercarriage. Now this, as we tried before, slots into the opening underneath. When it slots in until the axle boxes there, the tops, will rest against the edge there, and also this surface here will touch this surface here. So the first thing to do is to make sure we have a slight radius all the way around there. So just go over with a bit of sandpaper or emery paper just to take the edge off there, the corner. And then inside the box we may have had some glue that's gone into the corner there, which will stop the chassis going in. So just take a bit of sandpaper, fold it over and just rub it in the corners to make sure there's no high spots. So you've got a nice 90-degree corner in there. Then load in, you'll find it drops in quite nicely and sits down, as you can see, onto the axle boxes. Now I've designed this such that when it's in as far as it goes there is a 10mm distance between the rail head, or the top of the rail, and the underside of the body. Now this may be a little bit too close for some of you, so what you can do is, using some of the cutouts that we had from making the roof, each one of those is 2mm thick, so you can actually drop one of those in there, drop another one in on the other side, and then when you put the chassis in, it's now sitting on this surface on the packers, and you can now see that you've now got a 2mm gap there. This now means that we're now running at a 12mm height. But obviously you can add more if you want, run it 14mm, or put whatever order packing you want to. When you're happy at the right height, you can glue it in, or you can just leave it as it is now. It's quite a firm fit in there. If you're going to glue it in, then just put a little bit of super glue, that point there, and a little bit of super glue just there, and that will then hold the chassis inside the bodywork. What's left to do now is to fit the buffer. So as I haven't glued in my chassis, I'll just take him out so I don't drop it on my packers. There's an access hole for putting the nut onto the buffer. It's a standard binny buffer. We have a slot, so it's adjustable. Easiest way to do this is a pair of pin nose pliers. Take the nut, and offer the buffer through the slot, rotate the buffer onto the nut, so it's a snug fit. This then allows you to move it up and down on the slot. Now when it's on its lowest point, so that's as close to the track as it can go. And if you're running with a 10mm clearance, the buffer sits at 25mm above the rail head, which then allows you with the slot to move it up by 3 if you need to 28mm. So you've got a 25 to 28mm movement. Now obviously, if you're going to put packers in there to move the chassis or the bodywork higher, then if you're on your minimum of 25 and you move the body up by 2, then you're going to end up with 27mm buffer height. Just bear that in mind if you start changing the height. That's about it. So when you've got your buffer height happy in position, is then either with a spanner or a pair of power nose pliers, just grip the nut, give it a couple of turns just to lock it in position. Check that it's 90 or not 90, check that it's in line with the bodywork, and you now have your coach ready to roll. So that's that bit. Then we come on to the handles. I'll show you the handles. Where are we? There we are. And you can see that there's a slight bump at the top, and that's where it actually goes over the particular hole. Again, we use the same principle of a little bit of super glue, bit of white PA on the back, which I haven't done yet. And then that goes, as you can see, over the actual hole where the handle is. So I'll just add me a bit of glue. Even less glue is now needed on this one. Either side of where the hole is, otherwise it won't glue at all. Again, I've probably put too much on there. I'll just glue that in, and you'll be able to see it. And there you can see we have the handle in position. I'll just zoom back out. I'll try to zoom back out and bring that up so into focus. There we go, that's a bit better. So that's that done. Now we have to turn it over and do exactly the same on the other side. Obviously, if you're painting, you need to paint up these parts first. Choice is yours. So I'll just go ahead and now do the other side.